time for FYI, and Gary DeLacy joins us on the third Thursday. Gary, we got a lot to dive into this morning. Let's get right into it. The governor's proposal for AEA.
So last Tuesday, the governor in her speech really kind of blindsided educators, and it sounded, when I went out yesterday and talked to legislators as well, felt blindsided by the scope of her proposal for the AEAs, basically eliminating media and educational services, and I can get into some of those things that would entail, and then restructuring the special ed where it would be under the Department of Education, so centralized in the state. And then each of these 9 AEAs that we have right now have locally elected boards. They would basically be stripped of their power and be strictly advisory, which I don't know what that means. So major concern. And when Wes Golden and I were out in the Capitol yesterday, I think people are still taking it all in, and basically this is just engulfing the Capitol. This is the AEAs have been with us for over 50 years, and I think for the most part have done a very good job of serving kids. So I think people are really caught off guard by this proposal, and we're just trying to get our arms around it.
Is the AEA, are they funded by the state? How does that work?
Yeah, what happens is our local school districts have a state funding formula, and there is a flow-through line through our budget, like the Clintons' budget, Comanche's, DeWitt's budget, a flow-through automatically to the AEA. So it's a combination of state and property taxes through that formula, but it is a flow through. The AEA themselves cannot levy any money. It's through this state formula.
And there's going to be a lot of individuals impacted if this takes place.
Absolutely. And, I really feel bad because this was kind of a bombshell and nobody really expected this. So there's been a lot of upheaval, and I just feel bad for those, the personnel right now. And I think just the uncertainty, whether how are they going to exist or not, and in what form, and what does that mean? And I was told yesterday by legislators that basically the governor's bill as written will not pass, but there will be a different bill. But what does that look like to do that? Because I'll be honest, some of this bill to me is punitive. Like, it doesn't even allow the AEAs to provide educational and media services as an opt-in, or you could pay for those services. It explicitly says the AEA cannot provide them. And then the funding is not going to flow to the local school districts. So these services are going to fall to the local school districts as written with no funding. So it's kind of mind-boggling in a way. And I'll give a few examples so people out there can get an idea. They have educational consultants that come to our building and work with literacy, new strategies, math. I'll be honest, Portrait of a Graduate, which we've talked a little bit about. The AEA helped facilitate the development of that for Clinton, and is continuing to work with Clinton as we implement Portrait of a Graduate. Those sort of services will be gone. Other things, I'll be honest, you think we had a death of a student last year, or think about Perry High School right now. AEAs have crisis teams that basically a superintendent with a phone call to the AEA chief activates this group that comes in and supports the school district, staff and students with mental health and counseling and those kinds of things when you have a traumatic event at your school. Those would be gone. Mm-hmm. So the mental health pieces. We have regional planning partnerships, which it's a career and technical. So think about your auto teacher. Like, we have one auto teacher. Well, if the frustration for our auto teacher is he has no one to work with. Well, the regional planning partnership puts all the districts in AEA 9 together and now the auto shop teachers from North Scott, Pleasant Valley, Davenport, Comanche, all come together and they work together on a common curriculum, and then they can even levy for equipment and things to even out, like a small district like Comanche will say, we want to do that, but we don't have the equipment. Well, there's a way we can fund it through our PP to do that. That will be gone. And some of this is in statute too, like it requires the AEA to do this stuff. And now it's going to be eliminated, which I assume they're going to have to go in and clean up the statute if it would go through as is. But ultimately, when you look at all these things, I'll be honest, I'm very concerned about equity and efficiency of special education. Because the governor will say, well, we're not eliminating $1 in special education, but we're going to allow districts to opt out. Well, if a Davenport would opt out, they've got a lot of resources. They could take a lot of the special education staff of the AEA and then hire them for them. Then what's left for the rest of us? And if you're a small district, and Clinton's in a better position than a lot of districts. I'm not saying Clinton is going to be, and we could be affected. I'm not going to say that word in the greatest position. But boy, I think to my days when I was a superintendent in Danville, I would be like, holy cow. I mean, we may end up, and then you talk about equity, it should not matter in terms of special education services where you live in the state. I would argue under this bill, it will matter a lot where you live in the state, and you may not get the access to high quality special education services with the way this bill is written.
Amazing. And it lends me to ask why.
There's a lot of people, and I'll be honest, legislators yesterday were asking the same question because it was such a bombshell. And you know what? If we needed to look into the AEAs, put a study committee together, take some time, find out what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, take some time, bring a report back, instead of boom, here we are, we're going to blow up a system for 50 years almost immediately, because they're talking like April 30th that things are going to be gone. And heck, the legislators haven't even really dove into this bill yet. They're just getting their bearings, and the DE posted these new positions. And there was major backlash yesterday, like, why is the DE posting positions and the legislators haven't even passed the bill? So just a lot of, I'll be honest, a lot of this is pretty top heavy right now. I'm assuming that there's another piece that we're going to talk about, increase in teacher pay, which is really positive part of this bill. Are they shifting funds? Like, we're going to eliminate AEA services to help pay for the teachers, this teacher proposal. That's what I suspect is happening when you really look at the numbers. But wow, what a, and I agree teachers should get paid more, because the minimum teacher pay has not changed in the last 14 years in the state of Iowa. It is still $33,500 for minimum teacher pay in the state. Now, Clinton is well above that. There are still some small districts in the state that are like at that minimum.
Yeah, I would think so, yeah. So we kind of touched on the increase in teachers' pay. SSA.
Well, let's go into the teacher pay a little bit.
Okay, all right.
Because that proposal, and it's significant, talks about moving minimum pay from $33,500 up to $50,000.
Okay.
That would even affect Clinton, because a beginning teacher coming in, I think this year is $46,000.
Okay.
So it would be a significant bump. And then, like I said, you have small rural districts that are probably still in the 30s. So that is huge. And then the other piece is if you're a 12-year veteran, you're making a minimum of $62,000. I mean, I'm very supportive. This is part of attracting and retaining teachers and getting pay that will get them and want to do that. But here's some of my questions. What about that teacher that's beyond 12 years? You know, it looks like the money is going to be based on that first 12 years, stair-stepping it from $50,000 up to $62,000. I think there will be some huge morale issues. My 25-year veteran is making barely more than a 12-year veteran. And I think those are some of the questions that have to be answered. Yeah. Overall, though, let's answer the questions and move forward. This is something that's badly needed. and it is part of this AEA bill. One of the things that the superintendents are suggesting is separating them. There's a lot in both of these bills, and to put it together in one bill, it's a lot. Let's separate the teacher pay bill. I am supportive of the increase in teacher pay. I think it'll make us more competitive against the private sector. You know, we just started talking about those CTE areas. A welding teacher, an auto teacher, they can go right to the private sector. They've got a skill set and do very well. So for us to be better to compete in those areas, I think would be very important.
Again, visiting with Gary DeLacy. Before we take the break for the weather, let's talk a little bit about funding for SRO.
Funding for this is something that I'm going to really push. I guess, you know, after what happened in Perry, I would really like to see the state create a funding stream for what I would call SROs in every school building. And it would be a significant investment, but the state has $1.8 billion in surplus. You know, when are we going to get to the point that we have the good guys in the schools to protect our staff and students? And I think the opportunity is now. Let's make an investment. The way we currently fund SROs, it's in the general fund. That competes against teachers, Gary. So what that means is if I want to add SROs, I probably got to cut a teacher to add an SRO. Okay. I really don't want to do that. And that's why I'm saying it should be a separate funding stream for school safety.
Much more in FYI with Gary DeLacy. A break for the weather brought to you by Electronics.
We are tracking our next round of snow. We actually have a winter weather advisory that goes in place 6 o'clock this evening until 9 o'clock Friday morning. Cloudy skies, temperatures near 20 degrees today. Snow likely tonight as we drop to a bitter 2 degrees above zero. 1 to 3 inches of snow is likely. With your Storm Track 8 forecast, I'm meteorologist Andrew Stutzky.
We're back up to 18 degrees. Some cloud cover out there. North winds now approaching 10 miles an hour. Our update brought to you by Electronics.
Electronics Incorporated is the area's largest communications and alarm systems company. Electronics offers best-in-class life safety, security, audio-visual, two-way radios, and communications from top brands. Whether it's a one-man operation, a small business, or a large franchise, their professional team has decades of experience that bring you the best possible service. Electronics Incorporated and 522 North 2nd Street, Clinton.
Second half of the program now with Gary DeLacy. The weather has been not cooperative for getting the youngsters into the school building. Talk a little bit about virtual.
Last year, there was legislation passed in Iowa that allows up to 5 virtual days to be used to replace snow days. And I'll be honest, right off the kickoff with my administrative team in August, I brought it up and I said, okay, this is an option. Do we want to pursue virtual days? Because it's going to take a lot of front loading to make this successful, or are we just going to have snow days? And then I did remind them that about 5 years ago, we had about 10 snow days. We had a very similar pattern like this, except it extended about 5 weeks where we missed that. I'll be honest, my administrative team was sort of split. So it fell on me, and I said, we're going to give it a try. But in order to do that, we need a plan. What's it going to look like for elementary kids? What's it going to look like for the middle school? What's it going to look like for the high school? Obviously, middle school and high school was a little easier because they run a schedule, period 1, 2, 3, so they can kind of run their schedule through the day. Back in the pandemic, we had a platform called Google Classroom, where really the teachers interact with this. So I'm showing you a picture of that, but here's a picture of a teacher interacting with their students, and you can see all the students on the screen interacting. So there's the teachers interacting with, and they can talk back and forth with that. With the elementary kids, we had to do a little more front loading. There was actually a day in October and November when the elementary kids had to take their computers home, load them up at a certain time just to know how to do it, get on to Google Classroom and interact with their teacher. So we practiced and rehearsed that. And then we have always had the premise since the pandemic that teachers should be doing 1 lesson a week on Google Classroom so the kids don't lose the skills of that. So we've done a lot of front loading. And then, of course, we've called 3 days now in the last week and a half on that. I'll be honest, Gary. I didn't know what to expect. If it went really poorly on the first day, I was ready to say, forget it. It'll be snow days. We had some of our best attendance, even compared to in person ever. And we were like, is it the novelty of it or what? But we were getting attendance 96%, 94%, and I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, and I'll be honest, some of our buildings are like 91, 92 on a typical day, and we're getting higher attendance on this kind of day. Now, I think some of it is the novelty of it and doing it that way, and the teacher saying it's excited, and we're only limited to 5 days. So one of the things out there is if we get another bad stretch of weather, and I use my 5th day, we still might have snow days here in Clinton because you are capped at 5 days right now. But I do feel like it was the right decision, just given the response of the kids. We had a school improvement advisory committee last night. We talked to some parents that were on there. They were supportive of it. A lot of people talk about, well, what about the snow day? But you look at the weather of those 3 days, kids weren't going outside. It was either too cold in most cases, and so they're inside anyway. And what I'm trying to do is not extend into the second week of June. And I really feel that a virtual day, we're going to get more education done on a virtual day than when we get into the second week of June.
Again, visiting with Gary DeLacy, let's get into proposed changes to the Iowa High School profile, the report card.
Yeah, so if we don't have enough else going on, Gary, we met with the new department of head, Mackenzie Snow. And this was back in December, and she put out to the superintendents that there are going to be proposals to the report card, and so some of them I feel are going to be very problematic. I'll be honest, not just for Clinton, but for everyone. And one of the things right now is there's a really emphasis on growth from year to year. And the current report card rewards growth. So you take a student from when they took the test last April and where they are this April, if they show at least a year or more growth, you really get rewarded for that. So if you think about a special education kid that really has barriers to reading and things like that, it's hard to be proficient. But can they show a year's worth of growth? Probably. If they work at it, they can do that. So that we were valuing that. Well, the new proposal is it's going to flip it back, like being proficient is going to be more important than showing growth. Now, both will still be measured, but again, I think it's going to make it very difficult with students that have barriers, second language students, special ed students, that they have to be proficient on that, or they're not deemed where they, and we want them to be proficient, but we also need to acknowledge if they have documented disabilities, it's very difficult to be proficient and be at grade level. So that piece, another one which I think everyone is concerned with is they want to add chronic absenteeism to the report card. And I'll be the first one to say attendance is critical for student success. My issue is how much control does the school district have over that? Because a lot of that comes down to parents, particularly at the elementary level, sending their kids to school. And if that's going to be measured, we're going to have to really look at how our resources, and do you get back to hiring a truancy officer and things like that? They're going to be knocking on the door because we're going to get measured on that. I'll have to have a discussion with Mike Wolf, who now prosecutes those truancy cases, to say, do we need to be more aggressive? Because this is going to be measured on our report card, getting kids to school. So that's a major thing. And then the conditions for learning survey, which is kind of a survey of how kids feel, how safe the school is going to be taken off. And but we're still required to do it. So I'm trying to figure out the logic of, okay, you're still required to do it, but it's not going to be measured on the report card. So that's going to be submitted to the federal government. They were bouncing things off. I put in my 2 cents worth, but I do have concerns about what the direction of where that's going as well.
You mentioned you were just in Des Moines. Talk a little bit about that day.
Well, first of all, it started the night before. We met with key educational lobbyists, and we actually spent 2 hours with them because they're there every day. And so, I'll be honest, I asked the question, give me the lay of the land when we go in tomorrow. Where are legislators thinking? Are they, and that's where they said, hey, they really did get blindsided by the governor's proposal. Don't be mad at the legislators pushing this and those kinds of things. So I'll be honest, all the oxygen in that Capitol yesterday was about the AEA proposal. Like things about SSA and things like that, which you would normally be talking about. They would say, we haven't talked about it. All the oxygen, and like I said, it seems like education, and the legislature have said this, it seems like the last 4 to 5 years, education just takes all the oxygen at the beginning of the session. Mm-hmm. And it's because of proposals that are coming out from the governor. Last year it was ESAs, if you recall. Mm-hmm. You go back to collective bargaining, 6-7 years ago being stripped. All those things happened at the very beginning of the session that were very controversial. And so,
you know what is interesting, particularly in our area, some of the representatives were teachers, like an Art Ole, a Polly Butka. They were teachers.
They're not there anymore.
No,
I mean, to look at that, and part of it is we don't have a good balance right now between the two parties, and I do feel one party is overstepping, and even to the point now that I think a lot of Republicans are saying this is a huge overstep on AEAs and are not comfortable with where we're going with this. So hopefully we will get some common sense. And you know what? One of the things we said is if there's things that need to change with the AEAs, so be it. But let's actually have the AEA at the table. Let's have some superintendents at the table. And let's talk about what needs to change for the better. But let's not hurt kids in the process. And right now, that's my biggest fear is we're hurting kids.
Again, wrapping things up with Gary DeLacy, ESSER federal pandemic funding will be ending.
Yeah, and I just want to put this out because I think the community's going to start hearing about this. Back in the pandemic, there was 3 different funding bills that came through to support schools through the pandemic. The last one of those bills, it will end this September in 2024. And it's a situation where we always have to show what we spent it on, and then we get reimbursed by the federal government. So I'll just give some examples of things that we've gotten during the pandemic, but will be phased out because we're losing the funding. We have hired up to 17 teachers to support kids through the pandemic and try to pick up gaps. We're in the process. We're already about half of those positions have not been refilled because we are looking at that, but we still have some teachers that are being paid through ESSER funds. At the end of this academic year, early June, they'll be done. I do feel like through attrition we'll have different positions in the district, but we'll be downsizing because we've lost that. I'll be honest, your gym, that new air conditioning and heating system was paid through ESSER funds.
Which I appreciate.
Air quality was one of the things that could be paid for, and it was for renovation but not new. So we could not use ESSER funds like on the new CHS Phase 1, but we could use it on your gym.
Okay.
We're in the process of doing that with Whittier and Bluff. Whittier and Bluff, we started last summer with what I would call air quality, improved air conditioning, HVAC for those, and those are our 2 oldest buildings. That'll be completed this summer. It has to be completed this summer because that needs to be. So, I mean, I'll be honest, those funds have been and then what we've offered this summer, in the summers, our Jump Start program, summer school. Now, some of those things will stay. We'll have to use at-risk money and try to shift things, but some of those are going to go away because we've lost this funding stream.
Amazing. Just real quick, we got about a minute here. Facility update. How are things looking?
Well, weather was really tracking well until about January 8th, where I was feeling like, man, things on the project are moving. And of course, the weather has just really ground us down to a halt. You can't lay block unless it's at least 32 degrees or higher, so that hasn't happened the last 10 days. If you drive by, though, you can see they got up a lot of the precast particularly on the Performing Arts Center. We are still targeting phase 2 to be done by next December, to move in to that phase 2, which would be the Performing Arts Center, the new music wing, the new CTE wing at that point. And then at that point, we'll begin demo and starting the last phase.
Interesting program today. Thanks so much for your time, Gary.
You're welcome.
Listening to AM 1340 KROS, Clinton, Iowa.
FM 105.